Good morning, and thank you for being with us. State legislators were called back to the Capitol this past week to consider the governor's nomination of Nora Danahy to the state Supreme Court. Here to talk about what happens next with that and to discuss some of the developments since the primary earlier this month is WFSB's chief political reporter, Susan Raff, and Dan Haar. He is a columnist and senior editor with CT Insider. You'll find his work on ctinsider.com and in print in the newspapers listed there on your screen. Dan gets a graphic Susan didn't even show you when I introduced you.
No, I feel so unimportant.
We'll work on the graphic for next time.
We'll work on that.
So we're talking Nora Danahy first. What do you make of this? What's going to happen? Anything newsworthy here with this nomination?
I don't think there were any big surprises yesterday. I mean, the legislative leaders spoke a few weeks ago. They were going to endorse her. Even some Republicans like Craig Fishbein, who had some concerns about her suddenly leaving the John Durham administration, or if you will, those were satisfied yesterday. So she came away, I think it was 30 yay, 4 no, and 3 abstained.
And she made a little news yesterday talking about that Durham investigation, saying why she got out. Anything noteworthy here, Dan, that people should be watching?
Well, noteworthy is that she said it. She hasn't said it publicly, and various media have reported that there was interference by Bill Barr, the former U.S. Attorney, U.S. Attorney General, not
yes.
U.S. Attorney. And what's ironic there is that Barr is now against Trump in the Georgia case, and he's it just sort of shows you how much there is shifting loyalty in all parties, really, at all times, but certainly in Trump world.
And I think the big national takeaway was that Nora Danahy, in her testimony, Barr had pressured her into doing things that she felt very uncomfortable with. And she said that, judges should stay out of the political fray.
No, she certainly has always been sort of an above-the-fray person. She's been in and out of all sorts of different justice roles in the state and the U.S. Attorney's Office and all different places for years. That's always been her reputation.
She has. Notably, 2 of the votes against her were from Democrats who were upset not about how she has worked, but who she is. There are a lot of prosecutors. She's not a woman of color. There are some people who wanted a woman of color on the court. There are 2 black male or 2 men of color on the court. So, as always, there is identity politics in the highest court, whether it's in the Supreme Court of the United States or Connecticut.
But this coming week, she'll sail through.
Oh, no question.
All right, let's talk about the other big topic, and that's that Bridgeport primary. When there's video, it makes news, and there's video here. So what's the latest on this, Susan? This is something that's all over the place.
Well, it's Bridgeport. Bridgeport never ceases to amaze us with drama. And I think that Mayor Joe Ganim has some reason to be very concerned. I mean, if that video that we see, and that, in fact, is somebody illegally or stuffing absentee ballots into a bag, that's a problem. And, there's been a lot of talk from people about elections. They're stolen, and now all of a sudden this is making headlines. And this special session that is going to happen next week, it was really kind of to tie up loose ends. But now, because of what's happened in Bridgeport, there's a real push to use $150,000, which was earmarked for election, to try to make sure there are monitors and such so this doesn't happen again.
I like that phrase, when there's video, it makes news. That's a TV thing, right? Sure. When there's video, it makes news. We don't necessarily use that phrase, but I like the phrase. Clearly, we think we know who it is on the video, the vice chair of the Democratic Party there, Ms. Jeter Pataki. We see that she's been suspended with pay. We know there's no question that the legislature on Tuesday is going to appoint a monitor, because they already did. What they're really doing on Tuesday in the special session is fixing an error that they made in how they were going to pay for it, so that it wasn't going to be a monitor because it went to the wrong agency, and so they're fixing that. But that's going to happen. There will be a monitor for the 3rd straight year, but the first time over a mayoral race in Bridgeport. So all these things coming together, I think we have to bear in mind that it's one thing to see a video where we think we know what's happening. It's another thing for that to be adjudicated.
Oh, you sound like the governor. Don't judge,
right.
Don't make snap decisions.
That's
However,
right.
Remember in the last mayoral election with Ganim and Senator Marilyn Moore, he won, not in the ballot box, but by absentee ballots, and it went to court and challenged it, but not enough to overturn the election. So there's history there.
Aggressive use of ballots, of absentee ballots, is a disruptor in elections, just like Uber in the livery business and Airbnb in the hotel business.
Except
it's not illegal.
There are very specific rules on who's putting those ballots into that box, and that may be at issue here.
In and of itself, 4,300 ballot applications, 2,400 cast, which was more than it's 2.5 times what was cast in Hartford. In and of itself, that's just a practice. That's not an illegal practice.
Got it. But we'll find out more because, Dan, there's video.
Yes, and when there's video, there's news.
There's other stories that we have video of, including 2 other primaries. Hartford goes on to the general, but that's over, right?
That's over. You know, it's very hard to fight the Democratic machine. I mean, Arulampalam he was the endorsed candidate. He had the money backing him. He also had, you know, the groundwork of the Democratic Party. Hard to beat that. So I think, yes, he goes on. And I'm really not sure who the Republican is. And
Mike McGarry.
But he's not official.
He's on the ballot.
He is.
He's on the ballot.
Right.
I've had conversations.
Now you're sure.
All right, now I'm
absolutely.
sure.
Mike McGarry is on the ballot. And Mike McGarry has ideas, and he's going to bring them forward. I've talked with Mike McGarry this past week.
But is there video?
That's the problem. There's no video yet, right? But you know, Mike McGarry brings. He's a longtime moderate Republican who's been on and off the council
around Hartford for a long time.
Right. And he does bring. He went. I'll let him talk about his campaign when it's time. But he went overseas and he came back with some ideas for how Hartford should be managed, and his ideas should be welcome in the.
Let's talk
campaign.
about Derby, where there
That's
could be
what I
some
was just going to say. Talk about Derby.
Derby is a real. So we went twice. We went for the primary. So the current mayor was defeated by a Republican in that primary, Gino DiGiovanni, who faces federal charges for entering the Capitol illegally on January 6th. But that didn't seem to turn voters away there. Now, given it's still a Republican primary, will that change in a general election? It could, but it does send a message.
Well, it goes from a closed primary to a general. Could be a big difference.
Well, they opened the door for him at the Capitol. He was just there visiting. He didn't realize that there was a mob.
Is that what he told you?
That's not what he told me, but that's what the implication. Really, what this election and the one in Brookfield, they're small, you know, a few hundred voters, but it's in these small towns when you have a MAGA candidate against a somewhat more traditional Republican candidate. It's more of a signal that the Republican Party in Connecticut needs to decide what it wants to be. It is right now trying to have it both ways, as being both pro-Trump MAGA and traditional Republican. There's more of a dividing line there than there is in say, the Democratic Party, which is more of a spectrum. And so it's a cleaner line, and they have to decide which side of the line they're on.
And there was something else that happened in Derby, which I think everyone can learn from, and that is, even though they had 30% voter turnout, very few people voted, only 400. And there were many people who weren't sure they were registered. You know, Connecticut has a closed primary. If you're not registered in a party, you can't vote. But a lot of people don't know that and didn't know that there. So I think the takeaway is that, you know, we need to do a better job, not just from a state government perspective, but the candidates need to do that as well. And some of these grassroots organizations need to get people engaged in the process and come out and vote in a primary.
Maybe they should get video. We're all out of time. Dan Haar, Susan Raff.
I just don't want to be on the video.
All right, got it.
Oh, you're on it.
Dan Haar, Susan Raff, thanks for being with us. We'll have you back with video.
Thank you.